Welcome to week 3. I guess you made it past week 2. And I'm really excited about this week because we are discussing social perceptions and how they are formed. Oftentimes when we start to talk about the self and how we perceive ourselves, it's difficult for some of us to think about how we view ourselves, our identity or ourself, is largely affected by our interactions with other people. So I think that we're in for a treat this week as we learn more about this process of forming our own self-concepts as well as how we perceive other people. To begin though, we need to look at how perception is defined. When you look at the definition of perception that's provided in your textbook, you see that it's the process of selectively attending to information and then assigning meaning to it. And you have to really understand the selectivity that's involved in the perception process, because we decide what stimuli we're interested in, what we want to pay attention to, what we're concerned with, because we don't attend to all stimuli that are in our environments. Also, it's important to understand when we look at perceptions that it's not necessarily that we have the right view from our vantage point, but that our view is unique and particular to us from our vantage point. And a really good way to understand this is to imagine for a moment a car wreck. As ugly and difficult as it is, we know that they happen frequently. And you have bystanders that see a wreck, you have the people that are in a wreck. And what the police find as they are taking the accounts and of the eyewitnesses and the people that are involved is that they can be very different in terms of what information that they're able to recall. Just for example, over the Christmas holidays, I was in Tyler with my husband and we saw 2 wrecks in less than 5 minutes on the same street. And the second wreck that we saw, an SUV hopped over from the lane in front of us right after coming through a light and just hit someone in a turn lane. And there was no apparent reason for that happening from what I saw. And I really only saw the tail end of the wreck occurring while my husband saw the first aspect of it. And he saw things that I didn't recognize, like the fact that the person who caused the wreck was on the phone prior to the wreck occurring, and I didn't see that, but I noticed he was on the phone after the wreck occurring. In many cases, what you have is complementary views, but we see things not necessarily as they are, but as we are. We notice the details that are particular of interest to us, and that's what we focus on. And we perceive using a 3-step process, which we'll look at in just a moment. But I want to make more specific how we're defining perception as it's related to social perception. Social perception is the specific process by which people perceive themselves and others, and understanding that that process is interdependent. How we see ourselves and how we see other people affect one another. Social perceptions are going to form the basis of our interpersonal communication. So this is why this chapter becomes at the beginning of a semester and not toward the end. As we're looking at the 3-step process of forming perceptions, we begin with the first step, which is attention and selection. Very interesting step in this process because it's based on our needs, our interests, and our expectations. What we choose to pay attention to in our environment is influenced by things that we need. And for example, if you are in a class and you know you need a really good grade on a test, you're probably going to be motivated to listen by your needs within that environment. Our interests also affect what we perceive. Let's say you're a technology junkie, you always have to have the new and latest thing. When somebody walks by with a brand new phone and you're like, man, that's so cool. The person sitting next to you or sitting next to you, they may not even notice because that's not of interest to them. So it's what we attend to, what we select in terms of stimuli is based on our interests, also based on our expectations. In fact, we tend to focus on and look for things that fulfill our expectations. It's kind of funny because people will tell me, I registered for this class because I went to ratemyprofessor.com and it said I should take this class. And some people will tell me, oh, you don't want to look at your ratemyprofessor.com. And I think to myself, if it's the good or the bad, you know what, you're just going to look for me to fulfill your expectations in many cases of whatever that rating had to say, because that's what we do. And you'll find that in lots of different aspects of life. We're going to talk some more about personality theories and self-prophecies that really relate to fulfilling expectations. A second step in the perception process is organizing what we perceive. And we recognize different patterns. We also reduce what we are attending to be usually simpler than what we initially hear or see. Also, we rely very heavily on cognitive schemata. That term should not overwhelm you. It's just a fancy way of saying that we have a file system in our mind that allows us to be able to recall data and file it in simple forms. And we have things like, for example, person prototypes as a file. And sometimes they're largely based on stereotypes that we have through our experiences. We have also relational prototypes that we have stored away in files in our mind. And we have a prototype for maybe a mother-daughter relationship, a father-daughter relationship, a sibling relationship, a coworker relationship. And that's how we tend to organize the stimuli that's coming in, by whatever script, prototype we have filed, and we call those cognitive schematas. Then you have to look at how we progress to interpreting the stimuli that we've attended to and that we're organizing, how we actually assign meaning to it. And that's really when we get at the heart of the communication process.